Hello and welcome to The Report with me, John Rees. Scotland has voted no to independence by a margin of 55% to 45%. And in the immediate aftermath of that vote, breaking news is that Alex Salmond has resigned as Scotland's First Minister. Elsewhere, the Queen is relieved, the pound sterling has risen, and David Cameron is left with the headache of delivering devolution max. That's the greater powers for Scotland that he kept off the ballot paper at the start, but that the three Unionist parties had to promise in the last week of the campaign to win the vote. Even so, over 1.5 million people voted for the breakup of the Union. And the vote has now opened a much deeper debate about what the United Kingdom will be like in the 21st century. Sarah Say has more.
As soon as the results came in for Fife at around 6 a.m. this morning, Scotland's No supporters knew they had guaranteed the more than 50% of votes needed to reject the independence vote. In the No camp, there were cheers of celebration, while in the Yes camp, clear disappointment. First Minister of Scotland and leader of the Yes campaign, Alex Salmond, conceded defeat, asking all Scots to accept the democratic result of the referendum.
Thank you to Scotland for 1.6 million votes for Scottish independence. And Scotland has, by majority, decided not, at this stage, to become an independent country. I accept that verdict of the people, and I call on all of Scotland to follow suit in accepting the democratic verdict of the people of Scotland.
For the No camp, there was relief, but also an acknowledgement that there was a clear desire for a change to the status quo.
Last night we made history. The vote by the Scottish people last night to say that our future lies in staying with the United Kingdom has settled this question for a generation. All my adult life, the question has been around us, whether we should break away, whether we should stay part of the United Kingdom. And at 6:10 this morning, that question was answered emphatically. 2 million people have voted to say we are better together as part of the United Kingdom. We have changed Scotland, and we've changed the United Kingdom forever too. And it's our job to make sure that we build on that for the good of the people that we seek to represent.
The British Prime Minister also reiterated his commitment to change, promising further devolution across the whole of Great Britain.
We have delivered on devolution under this government, and we will do so again in the next Parliament. The three pro-union parties have made commitments, clear commitments, on further powers for the Scottish Parliament. We will ensure that those commitments are honoured in full.
In Edinburgh, some residents appealed for Westminster to follow through on those promises of greater powers for the Scottish Government after voting to remain part of the Union.
Well, I'm hoping that now Westminster obviously listens to, the Scottish people and gives us more chance to have a voice in the government. And on decisions to be made. But otherwise, just happy that it's a no and that we're sticking with the UK.
A lot of completed promises from Westminster. We'll see what they're actually going to do. They promised big things in the last couple of weeks, so they need to come through and follow through. We'll see. That's why I voted yes, because I'm not so sure on them, so we'll see what happens.
With a general election less than a year away, British parties will have to respond to the clear call for significant constitutional change. So although a stop has been put on Scotland's call for independence this time, the momentum for change across the whole of the United Kingdom looks like it might only be picking up. Sarah Say, The Report.
Well, to discuss this in the studio, I'm joined by Moeen Yassen, who's Managing Director of Global Vision 2000. And we're joined on the line by Shiraz Ahmed, political columnist, blogger and commentator. And on the phone, we're joined by David Walker, a journalist at The Guardian. Welcome to the programme, all of you. I mean, Moeen, do you think Salmond was right to do this? Won't this let Cameron off the hook? I mean, he had a headache. He has to deliver on devolution max, which he didn't even want on the ballot paper. Will Salmond go and make it easier for Cameron?
Well, firstly, it's a sad day for Scotland and indeed England. This would have really let the genie out of the bag, for political reform. I think a great campaign, a battle's been lost, but this is a war for freedom and independence. There are serious questions to be raised, both about the Scottish population as a colonised people. We have to raise this question, and also the leadership by the leadership offered by Salmond.
So do you think, but to get back to the question, whatever you think of Salmond's leadership up to this point, do you think that resigning now makes David Cameron's job easier?
Remains to be seen.
Okay, David, let me ask you the same question. What do you think? Do you think that that Salmond couldn't do anything else, having lost the vote, or do you think that that he's ducking a fight that many people who voted yes will expect him to have conducted?
Well, I'm sort of echoing some of the comments being made at the moment on social media in saying, is there nothing in Alex Salmond's political vision except independence? Doesn't he want to stay in power to accomplish, for example, a better distribution of income and wealth within Scotland, a highly unequal country, a country as unequal as the rest of the UK? Does he not want to stay in power to improve infrastructure? Does he not want to improve his country? It seems that he is, with this resignation, demonstrating that he is simply a nationalist. The only thing that matters in his political conspectus is to secure Scotland's independence, and that's it. And I think that does, in some measure, show that he is a narrower person than perhaps some people have realised.
Shiraz Ahmed, did you take that view, or perhaps some people might say, well, you know, he campaigned on an issue, he lost the vote, he's doing something which most politicians wouldn't do and don't do these days, and that's resign when you lost an argument.
No, I think it's quite right that he resigned. I mean, I've been on some of the media this morning talking about reconciliation between the two groups, the Yes side and the Better Together side. But I do believe the SNP lost this argument when they moved into the realm of fantasy economics. And if I could just pick up your speaker, he made a point about Scotland being a colonised and an oppressed country. Quite frankly, I mean, I just can't let that comment go unchallenged. It's patently absurd. I've no idea why he thinks Scotland is either colonised or oppressed.
Do you think that David Cameron now will slip away from the vow that was made? Because, let's face it, he didn't want to make it. He was forced to make it under pressure from the Yes campaign because they were gaining in the polls. Do you think that Salmond resigning will make it easier for him to walk away from that commitment?
No, not at all. I mean, you had in Scotland something like 97% of eligible voters registered to vote, 97%. I mean, that level of engagement you simply can't dismiss. And I genuinely believe, I'm obviously a member of the Labour Party, I believe that the Labour Party, along with the other two Unionist parties, will deliver you know, on the promise that we have made for further devolutionary powers for Scotland. And in fact, I mean, some of the talk that's taking place at the moment, it's talk about a wider constitutional settlement, not just including Scotland, but Northern Ireland, Wales and England. I mean, in essence, it's been a long time coming, but since the Scottish Parliament was set up in '97, the West Lothian question, that's been an issue that still hasn't been addressed, and hopefully we're coming to the stage now where the West Lothian question is addressed, and we're looking to put together an equal settlement for all the four nations within the UK.
Moeen, do you think that will be the impact of this referendum, despite its outcome, that people will now begin to say, look, as indeed they've been saying for a while, but will it reinforce the view that there's a democratic deficit in the whole of the UK and that there's something fundamentally broken about the political system? Yeah,
definitely. That word democratic deficit's not new. Definitely. The UK is one of the most centralised, as we all know, states in the world. And yes, definitely, this is regardless of the result, it's a political earthquake. You know, 1.5 million people on the positive side voting, you know, British citizens, you know, voting to break away from the British state. I mean, that in itself is an amazing result, and it will create reverberations across the political spectrum in this country, and it may take shapes and forms unknown yet.
David, I mean, you were saying that, you know, that Salmond's resignation reveals him to be a narrower nationalist than people might have thought. But that isn't where the yes vote came from. I mean, people thought that it was going to be in the SNP areas, but it wasn't. They thought perhaps that it would be in the sort of more Scottish areas of Scotland, but it wasn't. It was a kind of, you know, many people believe a sort of working class revolt against the elite in Westminster.
Well, two things. One, let's be careful in the language we use. Already this afternoon I've heard sort of some rather extravagant terms used. Most people are not terribly interested in politics. It was remarkable that on this rather straightforward question, yes or no, a large number of people resident in Scotland did get involved, and that's great. But let's not kid ourselves.
But do you think that was because they thought something serious was at? Do you think that was because they thought something serious was at stake, rather than being?
Most of the issues of politics are extremely complicated, to do with currency, to do with taxation, to do with public expenditure, to do with organisation and delivery of health services. These are complex questions, and we mustn't kid ourselves that people are going to maintain that degree of interest. We will necessarily return to politics as usual. But you're right, a large number.
But that's the point, isn't it, David? The point is that politics as usual means no choice, whereas this referendum meant a genuine and fundamental choice, and that's why people were engaged.
Well, and with respect, you're echoing some of the nationalist language. Choices confronting Scottish voters yesterday and today are about how much they're willing to be taxed to pay for decent public services, whether they're willing to see distribution of money from the richer areas of Scotland to the poorer areas of Scotland. Clearly, a factor in this election was a large number of people in such cities as Glasgow who feel they have, in one way or another, been neglected. As a result of deindustrialisation, they've ended up often in poor housing, on estates, and they want more attention.
But that was my point of the question. So I mean, I'm glad we've reached a point of agreement there. Let me ask Shiraz what his view of it is. Isn't the Labour Party in problems here because it split Labour's base down the middle?
Well, perhaps not in the middle, but let's be absolutely clear. At the last Scottish election, the SNP got something like 35% of the vote. There was no way they were going to hit 50% without support from, other parts of the country. And as it turned out, that support was coming from disaffected Labour supporters, Labour members. And that's concerning. I mean, that's obviously worrying. And I think that part of the job that we in the Labour Party now have is to reach out to these Labour folk who felt that they had no other choice but to vote yes in the independence referendum. And I think some of the messages that are coming out from Ed Miliband today, and partially from the other Unionist parties.
Do you think you'll find that easier if, say, figures like Gordon Brown and other leadership figures, say they showed as much kind of fervour about the trade unions as they showed about the union?
Well, I have to be honest. I mean, I was at the rally where Gordon Brown spoke earlier this week, and quite possibly that was the best political speech I've heard in my life.
Do you think
I saw a
that's
side of
worrying,
him.
though? Because when you're riding to save the union, and you can't work up as much fervour about the NHS or the trade unions, isn't that the problem for Labour?
Well, I don't know if you've heard the speech or you've seen the speech.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But he did. One of the early passages in the speech that he spoke about was on the NHS. The fact that he felt the NHS was protected, was safe within the. I mean, obviously, you'll be aware that the Scottish Parliament has full control over the NHS within Scotland, and Gordon Brown promised it would be safe, it wouldn't be privatised for as long as Scottish people wanted it.
Okay, Moeen, do you think that one of the impacts of this is that things are being promised by Westminster politicians to the Scots about the NHS, among other things, that lots of people south of the border think should be promised to them?
Well, of course, this one other commentator has made this point that the whole neoliberal agenda and establishment wasn't even raised. The banking crisis, we've done research on political economy, austerity, the politics of austerity, of course there's going to be a backlash against this outcome in Scotland by England. People down here are suffering, 0 hours, the figures have been rigged on unemployment and so on and so forth, I mean, there is no guarantee, that's the point. When the Unionist got a shock by the shock poll, they all went up there. As someone said, a fag end promise, at the fag end of the campaign. What guarantee do the Scots have that the English or London government will honour these promises at a time of a deteriorating financial economic crisis.
Shiraz, do you think that one of the things, no matter what side of this debate you're on, one of the things that the referendum shows is that the postal voting system is fundamentally undemocratic? There's some, 700,000 people who voted before the vow was part of the debate. So they were voting in a different debate than the people who voted on polling day.
Well, I mean, the referendum campaign's been going on for 18 months. So it has been a continually evolving discussion and argument.
Yeah, but an absolutely key intervention and a series of promises were made in the last week.
Well, let me just clarify that. I mean, your previous speakers touched on it for a second. The Labour Party introduced its devolution plans in March of this year. We didn't introduce them a week or 2 weeks ago. We introduced our devolution plans in March of this year. The other point I'd like to make is the 2012 Scotland Act, I do apologise, the 2012 Scotland Act, again passed in 2012, guarantees by law deeper and further devolution within Scotland. Now, just a point that your speaker made just there, historically within the UK, devolution has come about when we've asked for it, when we wanted it. Now, we've got a fantastic body sat in Edinburgh, the Scottish Parliament, which is is perfect for this task. If we want more powers, we can get them. There's no issue, there's no concern. The 2012 Scotland Act has already passed the legal framework. All three Unionist leaders have come around and said, listen, we will work harder and push further for devolutionary powers. So I don't think this is an issue at all. I mean, it's a bit of myth-making and naysaying going on here. We will get as many devolutionary powers as we want. I have no concern that this won't happen.
David, do you think that's true? I mean, there's a lot of noises on the right wing of the Tory party saying to Cameron, what are you doing?
I mean, in much as I criticise David Cameron, I think he's a man of some honour, and I think having made promises both to Gordon Brown and Clegg and in public, he will stick with them. But you raised the point as to whether he will be able to move asymmetrically to deliver to Scotland what has been promised without yet reaching any kind of conclusion on the package that would apply to England, Northern Ireland and Wales. And it's interesting that Malcolm Rifkin this afternoon has said Cameron must go ahead with Scotland even if he hasn't managed to come together. I mean, the English thing, the English Parliament, the English MPs' votes, that's going to be extremely complicated. So I think it clearly will be a test of Cameron's leadership. And let's not forget that the main question for many Tory MPs isn't, of course, Scotland, but Europe. And that lingers in the background as one of the reasons why his political leadership might be of shorter duration than even the May 2015 election.
OK, well, with that thought, I'm afraid we're going to have to end the debate because we've run out of time. But we